Still alive, Animaniacs! Well, Korra may be done with us, but we're not quite done with Korra. This series has given us a lot of fun, and what's made it especially fun for me is you, my Animaniacs, for your continued support and enjoyment of my recaps. So it's time for my Korra Kanda. It's Q&A into one word. And, man, I really should have asked for only one question per comment, but I didn't, so that's totally on me. Now, I apologize that I couldn't get to every question, but there are a lot of repeat questions, so I still think I got to the bulk of it. Also, if your questions failed to be specific, I basically interpret it in any way I wanted. And if you did ask more than one question, I just answered what I wanted to. Okay, let's start. What was your reaction to the announcement of the show? Honestly, I was speculative. First of all, I never let myself get excited for any rumors until there's a trailer or at least a solidified release date, because things can always go wrong. And yeah, I had the same thought as a lot of people when I heard it was going to be a Benders versus non-Benders scenario, because it sounds an awful lot like the X-Men. But I was still sure it was going to be good because it was done by the same people, and I was generally looking forward to it. Would you want another Avatar series in the future? The truth is, for myself, I just don't root for things that I like to have sequels, which is odd considering my most favoritist CGI animated film of all time is a sequel. Because even though sequels aren't definitively terrible, at some point the longer something goes without a conclusive ending, the more diluted it feels. Because you either get sick of the repetitive formula, or you need to completely revamp the story, which has a 50-50 chance of sucking. Ultimately, I'm glad we got Korra, but I'm also okay with the series stopping here. Though I do wish they had split the last season of Avatar, Last Airbender. I hate that you did this to us, Cameron! You could have called it Pandora and lost nothing, but no! You needed that title, making us say the name of that stupid movie every time. Especially since people are going to be talking about this long after everyone's gotten over your overrated mess. You know what? I'm just going to call it Atla. Anyway, yeah, I guess I do wish they had split up the last season of Atla into 2 full seasons, so I guess even I have my exceptions. Do you think a third Avatar series is possible? If it can, how would you want it to be? The creators said this was it for television, so no. Though Miyazaki quit, what is it, 6 times now? If they have any more ideas, that's what the comics are for, or web animations. Okay, you know what? If there's going to be one, which there's not, I want a series about one and in that art style. Oh, you know what would be even cooler? A one successor story. How would it be to grow up in that age of war with the power to bend all 4 elements with virtually no guidance? Granted, they still haven't really explained how bending started as energy bending by the lions and then became a genetic thing. But at the very least, that opens the door even now that you can just give somebody bending ability even if they weren't born with it. Huh, that could have been a season 5 thing. No! It's over! Stop making me think about it! I want to move on! Do you think Korra would have benefited with a smaller cast? Well, that's certainly possible. The story was certainly simpler in Last Airbender because we were only following 2 different story threads, and significantly less characters. But that's also because of the good versus bad backdrop of Last Airbender that was so simple and straightforward. On the one hand, the appeal of Korra was in its complexity, and many characters meant seeing world events from many different perspectives. On the other hand, while I can't think of anything I'd want to cut outside of the original romance triangle, I can think of a lot of characters I would have liked to have seen more of, but clearly there wasn't time. So yeah, there probably were too many, but if I had a choice, I would rather more episodes than less characters. Would you rather be a non-Bender hero or a Bender villain who ends up killing Korra? Ooh, that's an interesting idea, that if I could only have powers if I was willing to corrupt myself. But in the context of Korra specifically, that actually makes me think on where exactly I would be in that case. I mean, the entire point of the Equalists is that they weren't Benders. Then there were only 4 bad guys in Season 3, so that means I'd either have to be a religious fanatic waterbender from Season 2, or a Nazi earthbender from Season 4. Ooh, the choices! Or I guess I could have been one of those secret members of the Red Lotus who hides in the cave and does nothing all season. And you know, as much as it would be neat to be the one who killed the Avatar for about 10 seconds, I don't think it'd be worth it to spend the rest of my life in jail. I guess I could settle for being a non-bender with an electro glove. Which character did you want to do more in the finale? Where the were you, Iroh? If Aang and Korra ever got in a fight to the death, who would win? Well, that would be difficult, considering Korra is the reincarnation of Aang, so it would be difficult for them to, fight. But that aside, are we talking about them both in their prime or as their portrayed ages in their respective series? Because Korra's older and can metal bend. Also, Aang is a pacifist who couldn't even kill the Fire Lord, so that kind of ends the argument. Okay, when did Bolin become an ordained minister? I know, right? How do you think harmonic convergence will work with the new portal? Weirdly. What was your biggest problem with the series as a whole, and what was the best part about it? A, that all the seasons had to be self-contained so the stories were rushed, and also the love triangle. B, that we got to see the Avatar universe 70 years in the future and that was cool, also Minghua. What do you think of Korra and how she handled being the Avatar? I think she handled it as well as any 17-year-old given the power of a god. I mean, when you're constantly told you're the most powerful being on the planet and don't have any pressing matters to attend to, why wouldn't you think that you can kick your way through any conflict? Now, how likable she is as a character is really a different question, and I don't really have an easy answer for it. I did like the idea of making Korra the opposite of Aang, where he was hesitant, she was eager and impulsive, and I don't think that there's anything drastically wrong with her character. It's not like she's the brat from Star Wars Rebels, and everything about her character makes sense. It's just that she wasn't always enjoyable to watch. It's definitely a tough balancing act to have someone act immature and impulsive and, yes, angry and still have them be likable. And yeah, I've heard the Korra Anakin Skywalker comparison before, and they're not completely wrong. Yeah, characters have to start out flawed so they can grow, but we shouldn't want to poke out their eyes with sporks waiting for it to happen. And I think everyone agrees that it took Korra a little too long to grow. If only they could have portrayed impatience without anger, or at least this much anger. What's your favorite action scene of the entire series? Why don't you just ask me to choose between my children? Okay, let's just list. Sue versus Kuvira, because holy shit, Sue versus Kuvira. Something with Bolin and lava. Wan versus Vatu. Korra versus Zahir chained. Korra versus Tarlok. The Red Lotus jailbreaks. Anytime Minghua did anything. Tenzin versus the Red Lotus. And, taking down the Kuveva. That was stupid. Forget I did that. Who's your favorite supporting character? So my personal favorites are probably Lin, Asami, and Varrick. Or are those main characters? I don't care. Also Eska. Also Minghua. I don't care if this is too many. And Tenzin to me really is one of the best flawed mentor characters. Certainly better than the other flawed mentor that J.K. Simmons played this year. Not that he didn't do a good job and will ultimately get the Academy Award because, you're in a movie and you scream, you get an Academy Award. I just don't agree that teachers should be allowed to hit their students. And I have a residual acquaintance level fondness for Bolin. I'm always drawn to the more animated, entertaining characters, and unlike certain other characters, he actually had his own character arc almost every season. But there's just no getting around the fact that he's basically grade B Sokka. Which character had the best development over all 4 seasons? Lin and Tenzin both had very powerful arcs and personal revelations concerning their families, among other things like Tenzin learning to be a better teacher. But development that actually resulted in significant changes in behavior, I gotta give that to Korra. It took a while, but she eventually stopped kicking first and talking later. Or maybe that was just the writing getting better. I guess also Varrick to an extent, who learned the importance of social responsibility to science. Though that wasn't really an arc, that was more just something he kind of woke up one day and knew. He also kind of drastically went from being oblivious about Julie to let's get married, but I'll take it. On a scale of 1 to take my firstborn child, how much would you love to see something featuring Varrick and Sokka? I would so give a couple pints of blood to see that happen. Actually, if the timeline lined up, could Varrick have been an apprentice of Sokka? Oh, that would be awesome and probably something someone's already thought of and also probably not a real thing. And, I might be biased, but I have a hard time believing that someone associated with Sokka would get so corrupt. What is the biggest waste of a character, location, or concept that you would have wanted them to expand on? Iroh. Spirit World. Wan. What mixed animal would you have liked to see in the Avatar world? I want to see a mongoose snake just to see what it would do to itself. Also, dolphin piranha. What concepts do you think Korra did or introduced that was better than Last Airbender?
Well, metal bending has gotten way more awesome.
And I like the world's evolution into more modern social and political problems. Yeah, the topics mentioned could never be fully explored because kids show and everything still needs to end up with the obvious good guys winning, but I do like that these topics were at least mentioned. In a cartoon age where every antagonist is either a supervillain or a parody of a supervillain, and that all evil is merely a product of greed and desire for power, the Korra villains were still pretty terrible people. No matter what their reasoning, they were still pushing their personal ideology on an unknowing populace by force. But just the idea that people can still do terrible things even when motivated by the desire to help, it's a very mature lesson. It's a pretty solid layout that the ends don't always justify the means. Even if it is still basically greed and power, they're just in denial about it. Which is also an important lesson, because no real-life bad people are Draken. They're not self-aware that they're evil or preach about how much they love causing misery. They just make excuses on how what they're doing really isn't that bad or for the greater good for their isolated group of like-minded people.
But anyway, I'm good now. I mean, I thought I was good before, but now I realize I was bad.
Yeah, no real person has ever said that ever. At best, they just say I was wrong.
Do you think cutting off the connection with the past avatars was a good thing? Sure, as a story contrivance. Korra didn't have the talk to Aang MacGuffin, though she had that in season 2 and didn't use it then either. You know, the thing that confuses me is that I always thought the reason the Avatar state was so powerful was that it was the culmination of all the knowledge, skills, and wisdom of all the past avatars. If Korra was cut off from the past avatars, shouldn't the Avatar state no longer exist at all? I mean, I like Wan, but the whole Brava Vatu thing is actually a pretty terrible retcon for the series. You know, now that I say this, I kind of wish that the original Avatar was this artificial contraption designed by the original White Lotus to encourage inter-country relations. Like how in Buffy the Vampire Slayer it was really a bunch of wizards sticking a bunch of demons in a girl so she'd be strong enough to fight the other demons. It'd be way darker and also would have opened the door for the possibility that at some point in history there must have been an Avatar that went rogue and the power went to his head and actually became an evil conqueror, rather than the insinuation that Avatar is defaultly a force for good. Wow, I got way off topic. If you were a bender, what bender would you be? I've been putting off this question because they're all so cool. But if I'm completely honest, considering my personality, I'd probably be a firebender or an earthbender. And probably an earthbender because it's arguably more useful. Also because not becoming a vegetarian and not living in the cold. Can you figure out exactly what it is the spirits do? Well, isn't it the same as humans? They exist? But if you're wondering what was so important about the spirits that it was so important that the spirits in the human world be connected in order to achieve balance, whatever that even means, yeah, I have no idea. There is never a real solid reason given to why the spirits and humans living together would make the world better. I mean, you could argue segregation is bad for the sake of segregation, but whether either party was really unhappy with the arrangement isn't completely evident, is it? Now, you could say that we encourage harmony with nature because we don't really have a choice. But yeah, if you could somehow lock up all of the personified tornadoes and hurricanes in a different dimension and they seem perfectly happy there, is it really such a bad thing that we're separated? But on the other hand, through the regrettably less defined aspects of this mythology, it's really not totally separate. The spirits can cross the threshold and attack us. Somehow. Because they feel it when we wreck up our nature. Somehow. So I think the argument is that to formally address these random acts of disturbing each other, it's for the best that we just get together and talk it all out and learn to live with each other openly. That probably makes sense, as it seems historical for this world that both humans and spirits are violently territorial when they don't understand each other.
Seriously, Korra, you should have, taken a poll or something.
But this is also a definite fact. How feeble their personalities are. They are so susceptible to outside influences that their nature can literally change on a whim.
What, are they gonna turn evil every day at rush hour?
And let's not ignore the I can manually change your allegiance power. You're really sure it was a good idea to combine both worlds without any research or discussion, preparation? Just saying. Do you think the series would have been better without the love triangle or the Mako cheating subplots? For me, yes, because I hate love triangles. But I do know, and by that I mean am related to, certain people who love love triangles. But honestly, my biggest problem isn't that the romance exists at all, obviously. Romance and violence are just those things that get our blood boiling, so we always want at least a little of it in there. The problem was, not only did this drama take up a considerable amount of time when we only had 13 episodes, it's that we didn't get to know these brand new characters as themselves before they were pushed into the template labels for every single cliche love triangle ever. Gee, there's a nice friendly guy who's interested in her, and an emotionally closed off jerk. Gee, I wonder who she's going to get the crush on. I just don't know! Sorry, I need more time to feel like they have a genuine friendship before I can care that this drama is breaking them apart. Maybe that triangle could have been more effective if they had waited until later in the series, after we had gotten to know them and see their relationship grow more naturally as compatible characters, rather than the superficial cliches because the writer wills it reasons. Then again, I kinda like that it's one of the few series where it shows a hyped up couple actually breaking up because they realize you need more than just, I'm mistaking worry for your well-being for romantic love syndrome to found a relationship on. But then the first season was originally made to be a standalone, so yeah, omit it altogether. As for Mako cheating, not sure whether the blame lies with Mako or the writers deciding to give Korra amnesia. I think they just didn't want her to have to deal with that drama in the middle of the apocalypse. I was actually okay with Mako and Asami getting back together at first. I guess they just had to have that happen to permanently put an end to it. But it does bother me that he never apologized to her. Top 3 Varrick moments. The Julie moping, the scene where he's in prison, and when he refuses to build the bomb. That is when Varrick becomes a badass. Not done with the questions yet, Animaniacs, but from this point, if you have any other questions, let's just be incredibly cliche and stick with Tumblr.